Hi, this is Ezekiel Dasho, and welcome back to part two of Building Miriam. Part two is going to probably be called Drawing Miriam or Shading Miriam. Haven't quite decided yet, but if if you haven't watched part one, go ahead and go back and do that, and come back with this portrait of Miriam here in its early stages. And now that we've got her face built up, we can start to shade it in here. So this is the process that I am very fond of. The part of the drawing process that I'm so fond of is the shading. And I think to get started, I'm going to start looking for the places in the drawing that are the darkest and just going in and getting some value onto those places. I'm not going to try to finalize anything yet. I want to just build up a base layer of shading, and similar to cooking or baking or any other kind of creative project that involves time and patience, it's a layering process and it's a building process. It's not something that you want, it's not Jackson Pollock. You're not just dropping your crap everywhere and calling it magic or whatever. You've got to actually be able to show you can draw. So Pollock, among many of the artists that I just despise for just being no talent hacks who got on the bandwagon of modern abstraction. And I have friends who like Pollock, though, so it's not like I'm some kind of fanatic about it or anything. But he's bad. I don't think I've ever seen a drawing of his that I was like, he's good. Not like Picasso or someone where you see his abstraction, you're like, oh, that makes you think, and then you see his drawings, and you're like, holy mackerel, that dude can draw and paint. So he had like some skills to back it up. He wasn't just like, hey, look at me, I'm an artist. So yeah, as we go through the shade, let's talk about big picture stuff, and we'll talk about the picture that's in front of me here. So again, with the hair, definitely not drawing every piece of hair, just looking for those dark spots and accent and representing them, trying to represent them faithfully. And so like that spot there, and maybe this tiny spot here, and this will create the look of the hair much better than trying to draw the individual hairs. And I definitely owe a YouTuber by the name of Way, W-E-Y. I don't know if I've referenced him before. I think so. But Art of Way, he's got lots of great drawing videos for all skill levels, and his video on drawing hair, it's probably got 4 million views or something. It's great. But he's definitely one of my heroes because I just love his attitude and I love his drawing skills. So we've got this really dark eyeshadow here. And it's kind of going to make life a little easy, but also a little different because she doesn't really have eyelashes, or the camera's not really picking up her eyelashes, or they're so short and blonde that they just aren't really coming out. But we don't want to just invent anything because she looks, the look of the model is fine. So just being mindful of the eye and not approaching it in a formulaic method, just approaching it as it is. For the iris, I tend to be of the school that it's good to do this motion where you have like the pupil is sort of like a sun and it's casting rays. You know, at least it gives the shading some sort of directional quality that we see in the iris, and the edge of the iris, the edge of her iris is pretty dark. So get some of that. And same for the other. One thing that I think is useful to keep in mind when you're working on the eyes is the shape of the whites of the eyes. Just constantly making sure that whatever moves you make on your picture are, you know, with respect to the shape of the eye that you're working on, or the pupil or the iris or what have you, but also keeping in mind I want to call it negative space almost, of the white of the eye, because if that shape is out of whack, the whole thing's going to look really out of whack. And if even one of the eyes looks funny or odd or whatever, the whole picture will look odd. It's the first thing that people pay attention to. And I think we've talked about this before, but a lot of people will just look at the eyes alone and then judge the whole piece by it in an instant and say, well, the eyes look real. The eyes look quote unquote good to me. So their mind says, well, since the eyes look good, you know, you have permission to just check out and not even really question the rest of the picture, the illusion. So let's get some of the shading in her nose area. So this will be just these small round little circles here, these base layers, and build it up a little bit. It'll come together pretty quickly. I think the name of the game for this part of the portrait is just very, very soft, nothing coming close to a line, just very soft shading. And I'm going to check for accuracy if my lips are a little messed up. We can see what we can do about that as we go here. But I probably wouldn't display the photo next to the drawing for this one. Not unless it came out a little better than I'm expecting. But it's definitely still good to work on. And mainly what I think I'm seeing on mine is that in terms of the lips, if I'm being as realistic as I can be, that I think they're just a hair low. Let's see what we can do about that, but I don't know if it's worth sweating it too much. We'll just keep rolling. It's not a game breaker or deal breaker or anything like that. It's just sort of a self-analysis and correction that I would make if I was going to do this again. So we can start moving along more quickly, and got this shadow here. It's not like a glossiness in her eyeliner or eyeshadow or whatever. There's a little bit of shadow from the top of her eye, right above, and her eyebrows are a little darker here. And there we go. So yeah, it's just more of the same here. Now we're getting pretty close to doing this big hit on the face, this big layer. By big, I mean like a lot of surface area. And so let's go ahead and do that. By now, the pencil I'm using is pretty broad on one end, so I'm gonna get the broad side going and just kind of lightly I'm not even pressing down at all. It's just the weight of the pencil. And I'm going to be going over this, so it's really just to get a tonal layer in place. So I'm not really worried about planes or curvature or anything right now. Just getting this this base layer in place, because nothing on her face, as bright as it is going to be as bright as the whites of her eyes. Even the shines on the ridge of her nose and her lips is not quite that bright. And I think what I'm going to do now is that we've got the picture pretty much built up. We don't need this here anymore. That's just going to get in the way. That's why I usually, if I can, I try to like imagine that line. I just don't like having to erase ever. Unless it's for the purposes of like highlighting or drawing something. Like, adding some highlights in hair or something like that. But I tend to just dislike it. I think it's just a personal thing. Let's get the shape of her nose right. I mean, there are points in the drawing I've found, especially, well, I don't know if it's just me, but, I'll be drawing something and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this looks so weird and so bad, and I should just throw it out and start over. But a lot of times a drawing won't look good until it's closer to complete. And so, you don't want to throw something out that you've been working on for 25 minutes or an hour just because it looks weird during that phase of the drawing. There are lots of opportunities to make corrections later as you go, and if you continually use a light touch, there's actually a lot of leeway there. And so you don't be so hard on yourself. If you're having issues part of the way through, just keep going, even if it's just so that at the end you can say, step back and appreciate what you don't like about it in full, and then analyze that and point it out to yourself. Maybe you don't have to show anybody else, but if you can honestly assess yourself, you have the makings of a great artist, in my opinion. I mean, it's really one of the things that separates artists from people who aren't artists, is that they can look at what they've done in an unbiased way and say to themselves, yes, I indeed do see how this is inaccurate in my picture. It doesn't take any skill to look at what you've done and say this is the greatest thing ever. I mean, if I wanted to, I could say, this is the greatest picture ever. There's never been a picture in history like it. But while you can't prove those things false, it's just a total subjective matter of opinion, and doesn't really mean anything. And I think with the great artists and the great the draftsmen and draftswomen, I guess, they can look at what they do and see, my lips, I'll hold myself up. My lips are a little off here, or, my eyes are a little off there, or whatever. Even breaking out a ruler at the end and measuring and checking yourself for accuracy. And I mean, it's just that ability to put your own ego out of it and look at it from the perspective of somebody whose intention is to improve. That separates a lot of... It's one of the things I just can't stand about a lot of art these days, is it's just ugly, and it's made by somebody whose idea is not to like have artistic skill. It's like to like philosophize about some idea or make some like historical statement or something. And it's like, who cares? I mean, I'm in this to draw, and I'm not in this to not draw and paint and stuff. Well, that's just me. Like, I respect somebody who's trying to draw something, even if they can't do it, more than I respect somebody in a museum who's like trying to teach me something about life that has nothing to do with drawing. But I mean, if I'm looking at things from a drawing perspective, which a lot of times I do personally, but it's not the only hat you can wear, so to speak. So with the lips, you've got this shininess, and then you've got sort of this darkness. I don't want to make the darkness too dark there. I want it to be like it is in the picture. And the teeth are a little shiny, but there's also some shade going on there. I don't really want to draw the individual teeth though. Maybe just do a little extra shading here and maybe, I don't know. We'll see as we go here. Getting closer. So let's just choose a different area for a minute and work on that. And come back to sometimes just going away from that area and coming back to it with fresh eyes in a few minutes can really help. So I know that I want this area below her ear to be one of the darker points in the picture. So I can kind of use the cross hatching to get to that darkness level that I want there. Similarly, at this point above the ear, I'm seeing it as one of the darkest places in the picture as well. So in keeping with the photo, and so here you could have start facing choices about how much detail you want to get into with the hair. I'm going to just kind of do the impressionistic kind of approach and get the feel of it, try to get the feel of it, but I'm not going to try to get super detailed. We've got the overall shape of the hair, and then you can kind of shade it as one big object. So like this part here is lighter, and then this part here is shadier, lighter, shadier, lighter. And then here we've got this darker, and then another darker spot there. Oh, one of the cool aspects of this photo too is there's this shadow that's coming from her hair, or cast by her hair. And it's pretty subtle, but it's kind of fun to add in. And like that. And let's not neglect the nose too much here. And then let's get the under eyes done in properly. And now it's really starting to be the finishing touches stage of the shadowing for this one. There are some subtle areas where on her cheek they're pretty important. Important for defining the shape of her cheekbone. Same with her chin. There's some subtle sort of wraparound shadow kind of happening. And you want it to be very light to retain the low lights under her chin. And then I'm just going to go back in this area here and bring some more value into the part of her neck so that her chin is a little more defined. And this is just a matter of, I guess, light scrubbing almost. It's the circular motion, and just your paper might be a little different than mine, but depending on whatever piece of paper you have, certain areas of it might allow the graphite or pencil or whatever you're using in a different way than others. And so the direction of your pencil kind of has to adjust to that just organically as you go. That's why cross-hatching, I think, is so good, because it just is the best default way to get that value into those places without stressing it too much. And whilst having it look even and evenly applied and so forth. And now we've got these little dark, paradoxically dark lights. They're not highlights, they're shadows in here by the top of her hair, and they kind of trail off and get thinner. And let's see if I can. Her eyes are rounded there a little bit. And get her bottom eyelashes in here, and just doing a little bit of makeup on her eyes, kind of. And then let's work a little bit more on her nose here to kind of get this shape a little more true to what we see in the picture. Something like that. And the mouth, what can I do here to get this better? Just darken the darks and get those to be the right shape. guess I'll just try darkening this up. That'll help. Don't want to forget about the chin. Sometimes that's easy to do. So now I'm thinking, is there anywhere in the picture where it looks too, what's the word? There's too much this and not enough that, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. If there's too much, like if it's too dark in the photograph and it's too light on the picture, or if what I've done is less subtle than the photograph or more too pronounced, or so like in the cheek area here, I could use a little more, I think, tone in some of these areas, especially like right here near her ear. And then her ear, near her ear, I could use some more shadows. This mine was just too light. And just keep asking that question, is it subtle enough, and is it an accurate reflection of what I see? And just do your best, and those little inaccuracies that come out are in a lot of ways the beauty of what makes your artwork. And sort of like in the same way that, how famous actors in the olden days kind of had very characteristic looks, and they would make cartoons and they'd show the actors and they would all have these very pronounced character traits and these features. And, they'd laugh at them, but those were the features that the camera loved. And even nowadays you can look at famous movie stars, and some of them are very weird looking if you think about what they actually look like and look at them without sort of thinking about how famous they are or how talented they are or whatever. But in a lot of ways, it's that the weirdness, or so-called weirdness, that it's what the camera loves. It's what our eyes want to see. And they don't want to see perfection necessarily. They want to see flaws in a way. In a way, sometimes perfection can be just boring. Like if you look at a model in a magazine or something, they look perfect. You'd skip right past it. You're like, oh, they look perfect. That's a model. But do you look at like a prototypically beautiful or prototypically handsome Hollywood like A-lister, you think, hey, they're good looking and everything, but there's also something about their look that's unique, like in some cases extremely unique and weird. For the same with artists, and if you're doing a portrait, like it might look almost like a photograph, but the ways that you do it that are different than a photograph. Maybe flaws isn't the right thing to call it, especially as people get better and better. But it's just character, and it adds a lot to the look of a picture. And so don't be too concerned about making mistakes, and don't be concerned about all the flaws that you might see. Just do your best, and then assess, and then practice. And in time, you will start to develop all these little ways that work for you. And every artist develops their own style, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's definitely a very organic, human kind of talent. Sounds so basic and simple, but I mean, we can show each other some of the ways to build. Like, I can show you kind of like how to, maybe approach building a face and all that stuff, but only you're going to be able to draw your own picture, and whatever you draw is going to be great, as long as you you do the best you can. And definitely one of the things that's always bugged me is when people are like, well, I can't draw. Like, well, yes, you can. You just haven't tried. Or when people, even bugs me more, is like when art teachers in high schools or in middle schools or whatever kind of just write kids off and say, oh, not worth my time. I was never one of those kids. I was always like, the art teacher loved my ass. Like, they wanted me in their classes, and I was, wouldn't sign up. But it always bugged me how, like, it's like with dance, or people, I just can't dance. Like, well, it's because, it's this sort of mental block. It's like, if that's your attitude about it, no, of course you can't. You notice the same thing with people, and, oh, I'm not an artist. Well, have you tried? No, I never tried. Would you try? No, I'd never try. Well, it has a lot to do with why. And, it's too bad for them, because it's not like they're just missing out on a fun activity. I mean, art is a lot deeper than just, it's not just a day at the amusement park. Although it is incredibly fun, that's one of the reasons that I promote drawing so heavily to people, because I don't think they know what they're missing. I have friends that are musicians, and they'll tell you, music is more than just notes on a page. It's more than just, performing and accolades and but similarly with, it's not just like, oh, I really love to do this and it's really fun. There is that element to it, definitely, but there's a deeper level to it too. I think we're getting ready to wrap that up. And if you're still with me, thank you so much for being with me. And I hope to see you again real soon. It's not even really worth giving my speech about please like and subscribe and tell all your friends, because I am trying to build my channel. And, if you like my stuff, you know what to do. And feedback, input, it's always appreciated. And I'm going to try to keep on posting as many videos as I can here to build my library of videos as well as to just, it's nice to have a way to archive my style. Let's bring in some of these shadows here on the eyes so that that's a little too much. There, I just have this white spot here that I'm just avoiding and letting it shine. I don't want it to be too shiny. I want it to look like it does in the picture, or in the photo, and not look like a cartoon of what I see in the photo, but I don't want to bog it down too much either. I don't want to overwork it. Well, not the best mouth I've ever drawn, but maybe I'll do a video on drawing mouths and practice that a little bit. It looks all right, I suppose. Shouldn't be too down on it. Let's see, a little more here. A little more there. And, ooh. More there. A lot of times this part at the end is like super important. I should go into it a little more detail, but these final, darkening the final blacks is an incredibly important step to getting the look that you're after. And that step definitely doesn't come till the end, because you want those final touches to be in relation to everything else on the page. So there you go. If you've stayed till the end, I hope that little secret serves you well.